Shore Conference basketball tournament is well underway. First round in the books. We get set for the round of 16 and, of course, look ahead to the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. And, of course, joining me is our boys basketball guru, Matt Manley. Matt, an exciting time, a busy time, and I'm going to start with saying maybe the most open Shore Conference boys field we've had in several years.
Several years, yeah. You have to go back to maybe 2015 when you had Rumson win as an 11 seed, and they're kind of back in the mix now as one of the favorites. But you probably have to go back to those Randy Mater Day years where it felt like there was maybe more than one favorite. But even then, I guess, you go back to 2017, Marlboro beating Randy was really the last big surprise in a team that was supposed to be a favorite losing before the final. But yeah, the last few years with Randy being the juggernaut they were in 18 and 19, and Manasquan the last couple years being the heavy favorite and winning, counting last year's, if we're going to call last year a de facto tournament. But yeah, this year I think you have three teams that have stood above the rest. They look like one of those three is going to win, but I do think that they're not. They're human enough rosters that somebody from below could get hot and maybe pick them off and have a surprise winner this year, which we haven't had in half a decade or even more than that.
The debate actually even began with the top of the seeds because you had an argument for who was number one, which we probably haven't had in quite a while.
Yeah, I think there were three legitimate cases. I think most people distilled it down to Red Bank Catholic or Marlboro, but I thought Rumson, they're probably playing better than either of those other two right now with just the way they're decimating teams. I mean, the only game that's been close was against Newark Arts in the Metro Classic, where they fell behind early but came back. They've been playing great, especially since they've been healthy, but they're in the mix. RBC has had Zach Meeks out, sophomore big man, but the word is he's back at practice and he'll be ready to go for the tournament. At least for the quarterfinals and on, he should be back, which is it's big for RBC to get him back. And then with Marlboro, again, with the story with those three teams is when they've been healthy, they've been really good. And at this point, knock wood, it looks like the three of them should be healthy for the tournament.
As we get set for Friday's round of 16, which of those matchups do you find the most interesting?
Well, it's Manasquan Randy because we didn't get it last year. At the start of the year, you had Manasquan 1, Randy 2, and it was like these are two top 10 teams in the state going into the year last year. Maybe Randy was 11, but they were both basically top 10 teams, and we never got that matchup. They were supposed to play twice in the regular season. Manasquan got COVID. Then at the end of the year, Randy got COVID. It looked like they were going to have to move out of the tournament. They got through it somehow and played in the tournament, and then got bounced by Marlboro a round before championship. So we never got that Randy Manasquan game, and it's not the same this year. As I told somebody, Elijah Perkins isn't walking through that door, and Ben Roy might walk through the door, but it might be with a slight limp. So it's a different group, but I think that game is definitely, to me, the intriguing one because Randy is better than 12 seed. Maybe their resume says they're in that 10 to 12 range, but the roster says this is a top 5 caliber roster that, for whatever reason, just a couple fluky type losses, not to take anything away from Raritan for beating them in dramatic fashion, but Taj Holden wasn't there coaching that game, and they give up 7 points in the last minute. And then, same with the CBA loss where Isaac Hester misses a layup that might have put the game away, and they're down a starter in that game too. So the only real loss that was convincing that they had was the Red Bank Catholic game where they just didn't play well and RBC played well and it was ugly. So I think Randy is a real, I don't know if I'd put them on the level of those three teams at the top, but they're right there. I think they're every bit as dangerous as Manasquan, St. John Vianney, CBA. So the fact that if they beat Rumson on the road and then would play either Vianney or Donovan Catholic, I think there's an avenue for them to get to the Final Four as the 12 seed.
Taj Holden, little chip on the shoulder, took to social media, wasn't thrilled with the seeds.
No, Taj usually thinks they're better than, if they're not number one, he thinks they should be ranked higher, and that's understandable. That's a really talented team they've had, but they haven't played a game this year yet where you watch them and say, okay, that looks like the team I was expecting to see this year. But they have, Isaac Hester is one of the best players in the Shore. To have a guard like that, running your team on both ends, that's a major weapon that they have. And then to have Charles Anichi, who is maybe the most athletic player in the conference at 6'6". I mean, those are two players that not a lot of teams can match up with. And Manasquan, for as well as they've played, it's a young team, and it's going to be a handful for them to deal with. Just the energy that Charles Anichi brings, and then just the ability of Hester. But if you're able to limit Hester to those, to like under 18, and then maybe get out on those other shooters that they have, you can slow them down. But the magic number with him is if he gets into the high 20s, you're in some trouble. But Manasquan will be ready too. That's no slouch of a team for even though they're a young group. It's going to be a good game. That's definitely the most attractive matchup out of the 8 on Thursday.
You obviously go into detail on your round of 16 predictions in the story on our website. But so let's just do a cursory. Who's the most dangerous underdog in those games? Is there a dangerous underdog? And I guess at the same time you could say who's the favorite that better not have a bad night?
Well, I mean, like I said, Ranny is definitely out of all the teams that are in the double digits, it's them. I think Hal's been an interesting team to me all year. It's not a great draw for them, but they can shoot it. They have 5 guys who can score the ball. So Red Bank Catholics, there's nobody Red Bank Catholic can kind of just say forget about him. RBC's been kind of coasting a little bit lately. They had the loss, to Bergen Catholic, where, it was almost like once they lost to Rumson, it was kind of like, well, let's just get ready for this postseason. Let's get guys healthy. Let's just kind of work through it. So I'm interested to see how Hal deals with RBC's size, and then how RBC is going to deal with just that balance that Hal brings. But, Hal's going to have to raise its defensive level. I thought, defensively, they're going to have to play better than they did against Manalapan against RBC, because RBC has shown that if the game's going to be up and down, they can deal with that too. And with the size they have, it's tough to deal with them. I think Marlboro will be okay against Central. I think that's a tough matchup for Central just because you have to score so much, and just run it. I think Rumson's fairly safe. I thought Keyport would be an interesting matchup. Maybe Donovan Catholic can be just as tough on St. John Vianney, but with Nate Williams, I think they'll be all right. So I think Ranny is definitely the most dangerous team. But I would say Hal is kind of the interesting team to me, because I think they're probably better than a 17 seed going to Red Bank Catholic. And then you have Raritan against CBA, that was the game we should have got when CBA had to forfeit out of the field. So we're finally getting that one too. But and then like the 8-9 games and the 7-10s. Those are toss-up games anyway.
All right. So if we look ahead into your crystal ball, assuming form holds up, and regardless of who wins the Manasquan-Rani game, because they're a dangerous team, which of the potential quarterfinal matchups on Sunday at Middletown South might be the most appealing from a fan's perspective?
Well, I love a potential RBC Manchester game. And it's always tough because you kind of have to dismiss a team like Brick Memorial, who's absolutely capable of beating Manchester. But with Manchester's, the seniors and the athletes, Savon Myers is as talented as any player in the conference, and Damari Brown is one of the best 3-point shooters in the conference. So when you have two guys like that, plus some, not to mention Amari Petty, who has only been on Manchester for the second half of the season, or at least active for the second half of the season, I really think that potential matchup is a really good one. That it may be a tougher one for RBC, who's played St. John Vianney already, but they may have a tougher time with Manchester than they do with St. John Vianney or Manasquan or Ranny or whoever were to come out of that, if RBC even gets by Manchester. So I think that game's interesting, even though it's a 1-8. And again, I think Marlboro against Jackson, or I think Marlboro scores too much for some of those teams. Yeah. And like Jackson press, I don't think is going to bother Marlboro as much, especially with John Spatola. So I really think the 1-8 game there is where you get. That's where you kind of get the intrigue. It's a combination of two talented teams plus the intrigue of an 8 seed potentially having enough to beat that 1 seed.
And Rumson CBA potential
and
would be outstanding,
CBA
right?
with yes, and I think it's what CBA are you going to get? I mean, they put it on Point Beach yesterday. Point Beach was missing their best player, so that had a lot to do with it. But if CBA, it's all about if they're shooting the ball. If they can't. With the way Rumson shoots the ball, like, you have to be able to make some shots. So as good as CBA is defensively, and they are good, they have to find that shot, which they've kind of lost over the last couple of weeks while they've had this stretch where they've gone 5-5 since a 10-0 start But yeah, that's Rumson CBA is always a great game. And that's, we saw Squan versus St. John Vianney at the WOBM, which was a very good game. And I think Squan is eager to get into this mix with shore teams again, because they've gone outside the conference and done pretty well. They've showed themselves to be a pretty promising young team, but I think they're ready to show what they can do within the shore conference, which starts on Thursday against a really tough Randy team.
I'm going to throw one more at you. Kind of unfair, but what the heck, that's what it is. Right now, if you had to pick a winner on Sunday at the end of the month, who would it be?
The season started with me and I think others thinking Marlboro was the favorite, and I'm going to stick with that because I think their starting five has just been through so many battles together. It is a unique team because they don't really have like a true big guy, which is tough when you match up against RBC, and it can be tough against Rumson with Scott Jamesi. I mean, Scott Jamesi might be the player that you're front runner right now, but I still just love just the pedigree of that team. They're well coached, they're cohesive, they score, everybody can shoot it. Defensively, they may not be quite what Rumson is or even RBC is, but they can dig in and they unleash that press against you. So I still like Marlboro as like my personal favorite to win the tournament, but it's very different than it's been the last few years where it's been like, good luck beating Manasquan or good luck beating Randy. It's Marlboro, but I could change my mind after watching the games tomorrow.
And of course, Marlboro has that little bad taste in their mouth from last year, even though it was not an official Shore Conference tournament. It was an unofficial Shore Conference final with Manasquan. Of course, they had a myriad of opportunities to wrap it up, could not. Lost a heartbreaker in overtime, and they want to get that.
And not just that, it's go back 2 years when they lost at the buzzer to South Brunswick. A lot of these guys were on that team. Jack Seidler and John Spatola were starters on that team that lost the sectional final at the buzzer. So you had that game, and you had last year's game. I mean, those are two absolute heartbreakers, and that you can bet. I tell people this a few times, like John Spatola was a pretty good baseball player, and some of that had to do with he wants to be a college basketball player, but a lot of it is like, we're on a mission. Like, this team can win Group 4. That's how they feel, and that it's this is where it starts. They're out to win. They won the OBM, which is a nice start for them. It was a big deal for that team, but this team wants to win tournament championships, and they checked off two big accomplishments so far with the OBM and winning Class A North outright, and they're going for all of it this year, and they have the horses to do it. No pun intended.
Yeah, that's right. Mustangs.
Or take the pun.
You can't say it. I can. Spatola is my favorite player in the Shore Conference. I absolutely find him so entertaining to watch because I don't believe there's anything more than 100% because it's 100%, but he plays at 110% from the start to the end.
Yes, if 110% exists, which it doesn't, despite what you might hear from some athlete interviews. 110% is John Spatola. He is an endless motor, and sometimes you forget, but when you go watch them, you're like, oh yeah, he doesn't stop. It's one of the reasons why I like them as the favorite. I like that. Just some teams have unique players, and when you have a unique player like that, it's kind of like they were different players, but like Brendan Barry had the elements of that Rumson, and having that unique guy like him really carried Rumson, and in a tournament like this, I think a unique guy like that can carry Marlboro.
Well, again, I don't know if there's anything more than 100%, but Matt's effort from Matt Manley when it comes to covering Shore Conference boys basketball, he brings it day in and day out, and certainly if you want to follow the Shore Conference tournament, you follow Matt right here on shoresportsnetwork.com. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
We'll be keeping you more in tune to what's going on between now and the end of February, of course, only on the Shore Sports Network.